Good morning. It's a nice group we have here today, very diverse and from a lot more segments of the population than we've ever had before at a conference. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 5th Annual Public Policy Conference of the Ontario Centre for Engineering and Public Policy. This year's theme is Engineering Policy in the Public Interest. And I ask you to take this theme in two different ways. First, let it refer to policy that has an engineering focus. By this, I mean the kind of policy issues that OCEPP has examined in previous conferences, in our seminars that are part of our policy engagement series, and in the articles that we publish in the Journal of Policy Engagement. This has included issues such as the long-term sustainability of glass condo towers, the actual transit needs of Torontonians based on their travel patterns, and alternatives to burying spent but still viable nuclear fuel. In all of these cases, engineers brought engineering knowledge to bear on situations requiring choices that society needs to make. Whether it's about where to spend public money, or the need for regulation to ensure certain technologies are properly used, or providing some technical innovation that offers a different way of resolving society's problems. I think it can be said that engineers can propose technical solutions for any problem that is put in front of them. But in my experience, engineers have difficulty understanding that a solution that is not politically acceptable is not a solution, no matter how well it deals with the problem on a technical level. Engineers often believe that a technically superior idea sells itself, and if it doesn't, it's because the opponents of the idea have bought into some anti-technology myth. In most cases, however, the disagreement is actually a clash of values or interests, an ethical or political situation that isn't amenable to engineering modes of thinking. So if engineers want their work on public policy issues to have an impact, they need to incorporate the mechanisms used by other policymakers into their own way of thinking. So that brings me to the second way of interpreting this year's theme. Let it refer to the practice of making policy in a way that mirrors engineering practice. Engineering policy using the same methods that we use to engineer anything else. Engineers are quite familiar with the design cycle of problem definition, synthesis, evaluation, and problem redefinition. The profession has found this to be a very good methodology for developing workable solutions from ill-defined problems. But often this process happens separately from any connection with non-engineers. Too often, engineers rely on their own definition of the problem and on their own evaluation criteria. It's only after all the engineering decisions are completed that the public's opinion is sought, if at all. Our objectives as engineers should be to combine engineering with public policy engagement in order to ensure that technically superior ideas do not get discarded or worse, hated, simply because engineers don't recognize the pertinent non-technical issues that dominate in any public decision-making process. Today's presenters have much to say about policymaking. I hope you find their insights valuable and helpful in identifying and dealing with the kind of issues that the profession should be considering. But before I turn the proceedings over to them, I'd like to thank our conference sponsors. Engineers Canada, the overall sponsor of this conference, Ontario Power Generation, the visibility sponsor, and Consulting Engineers Ontario, the break sponsor. Their generous support and assistance has been very important in making this conference possible. And now I'm pleased to introduce Marc Bourgeois, Director, Communications and Public Affairs at Engineers Canada, who will introduce the first keynote speaker.